Hey everybody, it is Saturday afternoon around lunchtime, and we are going to shoot a different type of video today. It's sort of going to be around the world, and it is sort of going to be a before and after. I get too hung up sometimes on shooting video about the different stuff I do here in my fish room, and a lot of times if I don't feel like shooting video, I won't do whatever I need to do. I won't do the water change, or I won't do the filter change if I don't feel like shooting a video about it, because I always try to get everything on video. And so today is one of those days where it's Saturday, it's chilly and windy out, so I'm probably not going to be doing much work in the yard, and it's going to be a fish room day. And so rather than shoot individual videos on all the different tanks that I'm going to try to tackle while I'm down here today, we're just going to go around and have a look at what the tanks look like now. And then I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do, and then later this evening we'll go back around and we'll see what I got done. And so it's going to be sort of a before and after on the entire fish room. So here's my 29 miscellaneous. I would like to get in there and do some work today. It really needs a water change. It needs the glass wiped down. And I don't know if I want to do anything to this fern over here or not. It's not the best looking condition, but I really like the way the roots have grown to the rocks. And you can see them so distinctly like that. So that's probably just going to get left alone. Again, probably simple water change, glass wipe down, and of course with the hang on the back filter, I'll change the filter pads out easy enough, no big deal. So we'll see what happens with that tank, hopefully. Same thing with the Gourami tank, nothing special, but it needs work. It needs a water change, it needs the glass wipe down. And I know it looks like the whole end of the tank here is bright red, but it really does not look like that to the eye, I swear. It's kind of a dull, purplish, rusty color, if that makes any sort of sense. It's got a little bit of a purple tinge to it, but it has like a rust color to it. And yet my camera makes it come out looking almost like this really vibrant reddish color on the end of the tank. It's strange. Anyway, probably not going to worry too much about doing anything with that. That's not bothering anything or hurting anything. That is cyanobacteria growing in there, but it's not bothering anything, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. Probably need to do a filter change in here. Hopefully I will get around to it. It's been a long time since I've done one. But that's some basics that need to get done on this tank. Pretty much the same deal with all the tanks. Everything we're going to look at today is going to need a water change, the glass wipe down, and some work on the filter. Now this tank has a great big Pleco that we are fortunate enough to get to see at the moment. I'm going to try to block out some of that glare. Maybe we'll get to see a little bit better. But this fish makes lots and lots of that all over the tank, and there's piles of it that collect in various places. Even up here within the Anubias, I'll get in there and there'll be big clumps of it sitting on top of leaves and whatnot. And so I need to get in this tank and do a fairly superficial gravel vac. The type of substrate I have is not really designed to be disturbed very frequently, so when I do a gravel vac in this tank, it's very much more superficial. Some of that larger lighter weight loose substrate on the top might come up, but down deeper it's more of a sandy sort of, established bed sort of filter, or sort of substrate. So this tank will get the same treatment, wipe the glass down, water change, work on the filter, hopefully. My 40 breeder here, same deal. This one I know needs the filter change. It's been a very long time since I've done filter in here. Hasn't been that long since I've done a water change actually in this tank, but it probably still needs it anyway, so we're going to get in there hopefully and do that. Again, I don't have any direct plans on any of this stuff. I just want to get in here and start doing stuff, and we'll see where we go with it. That's why I keep saying hopefully. And of course we need to wipe the glass down in this tank too. It's not terrible, but you can see there's definitely stuff growing all over it. My native tank here, my former native tank, my New World tank, sorry about that. Probably not going to do anything in here today. I did a big water change not too long ago. I know I could use a filter change. This tank produces a lot of waste. It could just about always use a filter change every time I get in there, I'm sure. But today we're not going to worry about doing anything in here. I've got plenty of other stuff to do, and I did just do a water change and, you know, wipe the glass down and all that kind of stuff not very long ago, so we're not going to worry about that tank. My Gudgeon tank is probably also going to get left alone today. I've been in here recently. I got my plant sorted out, straightened up, propped into position so that it grows upright. I might have to adjust that light a little bit higher now. It's getting a little bit close to it. But we did a water change. I changed out the filter, and I even sucked a bunch of junk up off the bottom of this tank. Another one that I can't really do any serious gravel vacuuming in, but I can, you know, draw the stuff up off the surface without sucking too much sand out of the tank. This tank does have an actual sand substrate in it. And, of course, we get to my 125 gallon tank. Let me walk around here. I still got my bucket sitting on the floor from where I shot a video last night. And I know we've got a ton of glare from my Waterfall tank here, but that's alright. We're not really having a look at the tank. We're just looking at what we need to get done to it. Again, we need to wipe the glass down. You can see all that growth and everything, that green all over the glass. Probably need to get in here and do a filter change. I did one not that long ago, so that's not a huge priority for me, but if I do it, you know, that would be great. That would be a bonus. So we'll see where we go on that one. My little 20-gallon Angelfish tank here, this could use a water change and wipe the glass down, and of course with the hang on the back filter like that, even though this one just got changed fairly recently, it's so easy to do while I'm in there doing a water change. I always do that. So that's another one that needs to get a little bit of work done to it today. My Waterfall tank here probably honestly does not need any work, but it is really stained water. It's partially because I've put new plants in there, and it also has to do with the fact that my daylily, couldn't think of what that was called for a minute, a big wad of tubers packed in the ground that I dug them up in went in. So the tubers, I believe, are probably releasing a lot of tannins. And, of course, there's also the soil. So whatever tannins might have already been in the soil are probably leaching out of that. It's not dirty, like muddy from the soil, but that's the only thing I can think of. This tank does normally get tannin stained, but not this much and not this fast. I just did a big water change, like a big water change, less than a week ago. We got like 0 nitrates in this tank. Again, it's a really clean tank. It just has a lot of staining in the water. So if I do anything to this tank today, it'll be just a water change for the sake of getting the water cleared up. Likewise with this, I never really do much with this tank, but I might get in there and mess with that filter. The water flow is a little bit on the low side. You can see it's just kind of dripping and trickling. I still haven't gotten around to putting that pre-filter on that pump, so maybe that'll be on my list of things to get in there and do today too. And I almost forgot about Butterbean's tank, but we probably will not be getting in here and doing any work on Butterbean's tank. This is one of those tanks that I just really don't do a whole lot with, and when I do, I always shoot videos of this tank because it's always interesting watching Butterbean swim around and how he reacts to the water changes. And because it's a almost brackish tank, it was originally a brackish tank, but I've reduced the salinity. It's just one that's worth shooting video about, specifically when I do get around to doing water changes on this tank. So probably not going to mess with this tank today either. As I said, I've already listed enough stuff that I've got to do today. We're hoping that that'll all get done, but again, I wouldn't really count on all of that getting done, but we'll see. So alright, there was our trip all the way around the world on the before. Alright everybody, we are going to start here at the Waterfall tank. That way when I'm done, we can go ahead and get the lights turned off, and we'll be able to see the other tanks a lot more clearly without so much glare. So this tank got a really big water change despite the fact that it did not need it. I just wanted to get the tannins out of the water and clear it up a little bit. I changed the filter in the pump for the Waterfall, but I did not change the small hang on the back filter you can see hanging on the right hand side there. So that's about all I did. I'm not going to really spend a lot of time going over each tank as far as like an update on the tank necessarily. We're just basically going to talk about what I've done throughout my day of maintenance here in the tank. I do want to point out real quickly while we're looking at my waterfall tank here though, that my bleeding hearts there are just about done already. If you're a regular viewer and you follow along, you'll know that I brought those in not too long ago, and I've been talking about how big and bushy they'll get, but I also talked about how fast they would come and go, and you can see when you look up close, the flowers are definitely starting to be past their prime, and the color's bleached out of most of them, and I can actually smell that sort of sour smell you get when flowers are done dying off. So there is new growth coming out on it, but that will be just sort of leafy green growth. It may drop a flower here or there, but for the most part, it's shot up, it's done its thing, it's flowered. Like I said, it would go off like a firework and be done. So that's probably going to get pulled out of here. Maybe not tonight, but within the next few days, I'm probably going to be pulling that big bleeding heart out of here. Of course, my daylilies back there will start to fill in the gap once that comes out of there. So that's all we did. Water change, wiped down the glass on the inside and the outside. We changed the filter in the pump, and we did not change the filter in the hang on the back there. So let's get that light turned off. Let's get this light turned off. We'll have one quick look at what the tank looks like with only the spotlight on it. And for now, we will get that light turned off. So, coming over here to my 29 miscellaneous. Did a pretty big water change on this, probably more than 50%. I wiped the glass down both inside and out. I can say that on every tank we're going to look at today. I wiped the glass down inside and out on everything except for my brackish tank and my Gudgeon tank. But again, we'll get to those as we go around the room. So not a lot else done to this tank. I changed out the filter pads, the biofilters, the black coarse sponges that are in those hang on the back filters. Those are the bio sponges. They were all gunked up, as they do tend to get on this tank very quickly. So I had to pull those out, give them a good rinse, put them back in, and that was it. There was one or two little dead pieces, fern. It looks like I missed a piece right there. You can see it's kind of swirling around. It's stuck on that Anubias. So I removed a couple of little dead errant pieces of fern, and that is about it. Not a lot else to talk about with this tank, but it does look really good now that I got that water cleared up. I got all the tannins pulled out of this tank and got that front glass cleaned up. You can really see in there now, so I'm quite happy with that. So moving on to my 55-gallon Gourami tank. Got in here and did the whole 9 yards on this one today. We finally pulled that filter apart. It was really gunky, but not the worst I've ever seen. Of course, that's not saying much. I've seen some pretty bad filters in my day, mostly mine. But needless to say, we got in there, we got it cleaned out. It wasn't terrible, but it was definitely overdue. It was definitely time to get that filter cleaned out. And once we did, we got it put back together. We got the glass wiped down, both inside and out. And that is about it. I also got in there and sprayed a little bit of hydrogen peroxide just up in that top corner and across the spray bar. A little bit on some of the stuff you can see at the top where all those bubbles are. That's not from the water change. Well, it is from the water change, but not from like the bubbles you get on the inside of the tank after a water change. That's actually from me spraying hydrogen peroxide during the water change. I get a lot of growth up around the top of this tank, and when the water level is low, spraying a little bit of hydrogen peroxide on it kills it off a little bit and helps keep it in check to some degree. It doesn't wipe it out or clean it up completely, but it does help keep it in check. Other than that, not a lot to talk about. Again, got in there with one of my melamine sponges, as I did on all the tanks. The insides got cleaned out with the melamine sponges. Also sold under the brand name of Magic Erasers. They are fantastic for cleaning up your aquarium glass. And then, of course, the outside of the tanks all got cleaned down with regular old paper towel and some Windex. So moving on to my 55-gallon tank, I was reluctant to do anything to this tank at all. But I did do about, I don't know, maybe a 15-20% water change, and I vacked up a bunch of the Pleco poop off the bottom. It wasn't real terribly dirty when I got in there. I didn't mess around with the filter, but I did wipe down the glass, both inside and out, and kind of got in, got out, and was done with it. But when I filled the tank back up, I did allow the water temperature to come down. You can see it's still at 25. This tank is set at 26. You see that red light indicates that it's heating. And so we might be up to just about back to, the set temperature for the tank. But I was reluctant to do anything to this tank at all because all day I was watching the diamond tetras in there, and they were definitely spawning. You know, you can see that one right there in the middle was doing its little dance and showing off. It was more than that. They were pairing off. They were darting and dashing and hiding in the, going into the leaves and then coming back out. So that was definitely spawning behavior, and I didn't really want to get in there and disrupt that by doing a water change. So I wound up putting this off till almost last. I did just get in there, as I said. I did a simple water change. I vacked up some of that poop, wiped the glass down, and then filled the tank back up. But when I filled it back up, I filled it up with cold water, and I actually brought the temperature down 2 degrees Celsius. And as I said, the heater's now got it almost back up to where it's set. And so once it gets up to 26 degrees, the heater will shut off and we'll be back up to normal operating temperature. In the meantime, I'm hoping that encourages the tetras to keep spawning. I'd really like to see some more babies pop out in this tank. Again, I'm not going to do anything special for them. If they make it, they make it. If they don't, they don't. I've already had 4 of them survive. And so it's just kind of fun to always check on the tank and see if I've got any little fry swimming around in there or not. One of these days, we'll find some more fry in here. You watch. We'll see them. So moving on to my 40 breeder here. This is the last tank I tended to, and I didn't do much of anything to it except wipe down the glass on the inside and out. I did not do a water change, and I did not mess with the filter, and that's kind of a bummer because this is the one tank that I really wanted to get in there and do the filter. It's been so long since I've cleaned the filter out on this tank. However, I did check several parameters in this tank. I checked the total dissolved solids. They are at 224. That is the same total dissolved solids that are in my Waterfall tank, which for my regular viewers you'll know is like my cleanest tank. I have trouble getting the nitrates up in that tank, and I just never have any problems with that tank ever developing any level of dissolved solids or anything. So 224 dissolved solids is really low. That's not much higher than what my groundwater is or my tap water is. That's usually, well, this time of year it might be a little higher. It is springtime, and we might be, I'm in kind of almost farm country, so don't really know if the dissolved solids in my tap water are a little higher than that right now. They might be. So 224 on the dissolved solids. My pH was 6.9, right where I want it. And the nitrates were at about 20 parts per million. I've got good flow coming out of my spray bar. One section is spraying across the top of the tank, and then the rest of them are spraying down the back of glass. And I probably could have gotten in there and cleaned some of the crud off of my power head back there, but you see stuff that hits in front of it just goes shooting across the back of the tank. So there's still plenty of flow coming out of my power head back there. And since this was the last tank I got to out of all the tanks I worked on today, I decided I just wasn't going to mess with this tank. There's nothing wrong with it. The water parameters are fine. The fish look good. All I really needed to do was wipe down the glass and get it looking presentable again. At least, the glass presentable. The plants are probably a different story, but we'll talk about that in a later video. We'll get in here and do something to this tank one of these days. So that's it. I didn't do anything to this tank at all, but my pH is right where I want it. Total dissolved solids are low, and the nitrates are low, and so I decided no need to worry about it. My 125-gallon New World tank actually did get a very large water change. I did probably about a 50 to 60% water change. I did not mess with the filter, but I did get in there and get the glass wiped down. I threw a whole bunch of water sprite in there that I took out of my other 125 that I've got down here. We'll be looking at in a moment. All this sort of darker green from here over, all that came out of my 125, and I threw it in there because not only does the tilapia love to munch on the plants, but the silver dollars in there love to munch on the plants, and I'm afraid if they don't have enough plants and stuff to munch on, they will start nipping at fins. And of course I've got an angelfish in this tank, and I don't want my angelfish to get its fins nipped on. So other than that, not a lot to talk about. Again, just a huge water change. Did not mess with the filter, but I did get in there and wipe the glass down good and thorough, and I wiped the glass down on the outside good and thorough. I also noticed that my sickly shiner that was in there, this is my big shiner, and if you'll notice on the opposite side of its head right now, the left side of its head, if it turns around, we'll be able to see like a big mark on it, and that was like a scale that's been hanging off of it for the last few days. I'm sure it banged its head into something and knocked a scale loose, and it's finally, the scale has come off, but there's a big white mark where it used to be. So I really need to get that one out of there, and I've got these two creek chubs in here, this one, and there's a bigger one somewhere right there. I couldn't see it through my own hand. I really need to get those two fish out of this tank as well. But I did have another minnow, very similar to this one, but it was a little bit larger, and it had been really sick. I don't know what was wrong with it, but it was losing weight, and you could see it had like that ridge back where you could see its spine, and it was just getting skinnier and skinnier, and its scales were looking nasty. And today it looked as though it was covered with epistolus, or I'm sorry, I always want to call it epistolus, but it's actually pronounced epistylus. Epistylus almost looks like the way you'd pronounce it if you were trying to sound it out, but it is actually pronounced epistylus, not epistolus. But I think it had the epistylus on it. That is something I'm going to be talking about separately in a video coming up here real soon. I keep forgetting about it. It's something I've been meaning to talk about for a while now, and I just, one thing pushes the next out, and I've just completely forgotten about it. So it did look like it had the epistylus growing on it, which is a good indication that it was in very poor health and probably on its last fins, and so I was able to net it out of the tank fairly easily. It didn't, really try to get away too much, and I euthanized it, and so we no longer have to worry about that sickly minnow being in the tank. I don't think it was a threat to the others. I don't think it was anything that was contagious. Again, the epistylus is something that we'll talk about specifically in an upcoming video. It's something that gets confused for ick a lot. And I think that is actually what was in my quarantine tank not too long ago, where I was just battling and battling and battling and could not get on top of that ick. I think that's because it wasn't ick. I think it was that epistylus. And again, we'll be talking about that in an upcoming video. And if you don't hear me talking about it soon, remind me. Don't be shy about reminding me to get on that. I do want to shoot that video. So moving on to my purple spotted gudgeon tank. Didn't do squat doodly with this tank at all. Kind of walked past it, looked at it, thought about cleaning the glass off. Sorry about the noise of this fan. I always forget to turn it off before I start my videos. You can see how grungy the glass is here. So I didn't get in there. That's that green spot algae. That would take a little bit of scrubbing to get in there. But as I said, I just did a water change on this the other day. I put that bar in there. My swamp weed is just growing crazy out of control. That's actually going to start having some flowers on it pretty soon. You can already see, oh, we've already got some flowers on there. Speaking of the devil, let me try to put a little shade on that so we can actually see the color a little bit. They're really dainty little purple flowers, but this light is so bright it makes it hard to actually see the purple color. If I shade it just a little bit, you can usually see the purple. So that'll get a lot of flowers on it as it develops, but it will get huge. Eventually I'll have to cut it down. I think they get like 6 or 8 feet, maybe 10 feet out in their natural wild habitat. And they are a marginal plant. They grow in swamps and wetlands and marginal areas, so their roots are down in the water, and the rest of the plant grows up and out and looks like that. So I'm excited about that, but I did not get in and actually do any work to this tank, so we're going to move along. My 125-gallon tank. We'll sort of work our way down because I did get into this end and I cut back a lot of my red tiger lotus. Opened this end up a lot to really let the light in there. Did a pretty significant water change, probably a 50% to 60%. Again, significant. Today was kind of a let's get it done day while I was in here. I started this around lunchtime and it is now pushing 8 o'clock, so I'm trying to get this all wrapped up so I can get my video out by later this evening. So every time I do a big water change in this one tank, I actually tried to bring the water temperature down a little bit, not as drastically as I did in my other tank, but whenever I do that and whenever I do a water change in this tank, I always get spawning behavior from my Rainbowfish. And you can see I'm getting it today. If you're not familiar with my Rainbowfish here, the ones that are sort of multicolored like that are Marcy Rainbowfish. They're a hybrid, and they are a cross between the Parkinson's and something else. I don't know what the other fish is, but if you're looking for something similar to them, because they are a stunning rainbow fish, look for Parkinson's Rainbowfish. The solid colored ones are albino millennium rainbowfish. So the more yellowy ones are the females and the darker reddish orange ones are the males. So we got some spawning behavior going on from them already. I did get in and clean out the filter on this tank, and I kind of thought at first, I didn't really need to get in and change the filter, but what I realized was that that's not true. It was definitely time to change the filter. I'm just so used to letting the filters go way longer than they should that I didn't think about it as being ready to change the filter. And the way it worked was I went down from the top tray all the way down to the bottom, and the top trays were relatively clean, as they should be. Those are the biological trays. And then when I got down to the bottom, where the mechanical filtration was, that was really, really ready to be changed. And so that was like perfect timing. That's when you should do a filter change, not when the whole entire filter is packed full of gunk. And I usually put it off so long that that's when I'm doing it. So it seemed like I was doing an unnecessary filter change when I really wasn't. It really was time to change the filter on this tank too. And lastly, I will point out, since we've been looking at them, that my loaches do not look good. My big one doesn't look bad. I don't know if there's anything wrong with it or not. You can kind of see that's starting to get a little ridge line on this one. My small one, the skinny one, is just getting skinnier and skinnier. And again, I don't know what to do with it. I've been feeding it nothing but the medicated food. Some other food has gone in the tank, so it does have access to other food. And maybe it's ignoring the... see, that's the skinny one right there. And it just does not look good at all. It is so skinny. So that bums me out. Again, I don't know what else to do. I've had people suggest pulling it out of this tank and putting it in a different tank, and I don't know what that would do. It would be the same circumstance. I would just try to get it to eat the medicated food, and if it doesn't eat the medicated food, then I don't know what else to do. So I can keep trying to get it to eat the medicated food, but other than that, again, I just don't know what to do. I'm afraid at the very least that little one is not going to be with us for too much longer because it looks so skinny now. So anyway, like I said, I try not to do an update on the tanks, but that is something that's worth doing an update on. I will be doing an update more specifically about those loaches by themselves in the future anyway. So last but not least on this tank, I did pull, believe it or not, about 50% of the floating water sprite out of this end of the tank, and that's what went into the 125 New World tank. I should probably get in there and even pull some more out of this, but we'll see. I don't know. My Angelfish tank here, 20-gallon Angelfish tank. Once again, about a 50% water change. I wiped the glass down. I wiped the glass on the end down from the other room where I sit. I can look in and look down the end of the tank. And I was contemplating again today switching my Angelfish around. I really like my green giant that I've got in my 55-gallon tank, and underneath of this light it would just look so amazing. Whereas my German blue here When he turns the right way, you get those amazing glints of blue and everything in there, but it's still just not a looker the way my green giant is, and so I'm considering switching them back again just so I can get that amazing looking angelfish in this tank where I see it more often. Other than that, not a lot to talk about. I gravel vacked gently in this tank. This one tends to build up the mulm and crud, and you can kind of see the little mountains of substrate where I scrunch the gravel vac down in there. I was starting to get a little bit of cyanobacteria growing on the bottom, but instead of worrying about treating for it, I just used the gravel vac and kind of crunched it around and break it up and sort of grind it into the gravel a little bit, and that clears it out enough that I'm not going to worry about treating it for a little while. You know, again, you can hardly even tell it's starting to develop there, so we'll give that time to grow back in. I also got in here and pulled a whole bunch of offshoots and offspring from my water sprite here, so I threw them in my grow out tank. Don't forget, I do sell all this stuff, so I got plenty of plants available for sale right now, especially if you're looking for a water sprite. So that's it. That brings us all the way back around to where we started, although it is dark at this point. We can say goodbye to Butterbean here. We didn't do anything to his tank, as we said, but I will take a moment to showcase him. We'll turn that forward light on. This is the one I turn on when I'm shooting video of him. So I did throw a snail or two in the tank while I was working. Came across a couple in my waterfall tank. Pulled them out and threw them in. He's actually starting to look better with the lesions. Those white spots on him. Again, I don't know what they are. They seem to come and go. Sometimes I look at him and they look really bad, and other times I look at him and they look like they've almost completely cleared up. And I haven't done anything since the last water change. I did have one person suggest that figure 8 puffers need to be in marine water by the time they're adults. And I don't know if that's true or not. I've never heard that before. I always heard that the figure 8 puffers needed to be in brackish water by the time they were adults. And they could start out in freshwater as juveniles, but by the time they were adults, they needed to be in brackish. So what I wound up doing was reducing the salinity, and when I did that, he seemed to get better. So I'm a little reluctant to jack the salinity back up and make it closer to marine water, because right now we're not even actually technically in brackish territory anymore. We're just below the threshold of what would be considered brackish water, and again, that seemed to make him look better. I'm almost tempted to reduce it all the way down to like really fresh water, you know, knock it down another point or something and see if he doesn't get any better. I know the plants will appreciate it, and we'll get a lot less of that red cyanobacteria. The salt seems to be a key factor in the red cyanobacteria. So there you go. We're already 25 minutes into this segment, and I just remembered we have a good 10-minute segment in front of this, so this is going to be a long video. But I will leave you here with my brackish tank and say thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you real soon in the next one.